I need to reveal a huge secret to my perfect girlfriend, but I don't know how. Please help. When I was growing up, I constantly heard grown men talk casually about how they hated their wives. It was so confusing me too as a kid, and I didn't understand why so many people were married to partners they seemed to hate. Since then, I always knew that wouldn't be me, and every partner I've ever had, I've been severely in love with. Yet, none of them compare to my current girlfriend. We have been together for about 5 years and she is the absolute light of my life. We met at my lowest point. I was in and out of rehab, battling depression and a severe drug addiction. We met at one of the counseling centers I was going to. She was being treated for anxiety and depression, and we got along right away even though we were both so damaged. As soon as we started to get to know each other, I could see that there was something beautiful and different about this girl. She was by far the most kind-hearted, loving person I have ever met in my life, and I think I fell in love with her within the same week we started talking. I know that sounds insane, but if you knew my girlfriend, you would completely understand. Anyway, like I said, we have been together for about 5 years. In that time, we have grown to manage both of our individual issues and lead healthier, stable lives. Let me just say, I mean it when I say my girlfriend saved my life. I could have never recovered from my addiction and learned to cope with my depression if it hadn't been for her unconditional love and never-ending support. She is just one of those people who knows exactly what to say when you're feeling sad, and every single time I have fallen down, she has been there to pick me up. In 1,000 years, I could have never thought that I would deserve a partner as perfect as her. She encouraged me to go back to school, and I graduated with a STEM degree. Sometimes I stare at my diploma and I can't believe that it was earned by an ex-addict, but again, I wouldn't have achieved that without my girlfriend. Soon after I got my degree, my entire world opened up and it didn't take long for me to earn a high-paying job. I wanted to give my girlfriend the world after she had given me back mine, and since I had a high salary, I asked her if she wanted to quit her job since I could pay both our bills now with money left over. She is an incredibly giving person, so it was hard for her to accept my offer, but eventually she agreed, and it makes me so happy to be able to provide for and take care of the woman I love. I plan to propose to her within the year, and I am so excited to reach the next milestone in our relationship. However, as perfect as my girlfriend is, there is one thing that she is absolutely terrible at. Ever since my girlfriend quit her job, she has been doing a lot of housework, and she cooks and cleans all the time, even though I never ask her to. The only thing is, my girlfriend is probably the worst chef on the planet. She has absolutely no taste for what foods go together or how to use seasonings, and every single meal she has cooked for us has been borderline inedible. Just in the past month, I have gotten sick to the point of throwing up because her food is just that awful. I have no idea how she is eating her own food, and I kept hoping her skills would improve, but they only seem to get worse. The thing. I truly cannot bring myself to tell her. It was so hard for her to agree to be a stay-at-home girlfriend, and I know that it is important for her to be able to contribute to our household. So I really don't feel comfortable telling her that she's an awful cook. I don't have the balls to tell her to her face that I don't like the food she's making. I just could not handle the slightest bit of sadness on her face and know I caused it. I know this sounds absolutely bonkers, and it could be solved by easily communicating with her, but I just can't do it. I dedicated the rest of my life to making my sweet girl happier, and I couldn't bring myself to do anything that might hurt her confidence. But honestly, I'm worried I might develop stomach problems if I keep throwing up every other goddamn meal that she makes. What is the best way for me to come out and tell her the truth about her cooking? My girlfriend got a huge tattoo without asking me first. I'm a pretty handsome and successful guy, so I've had plenty of girlfriends before my current one, Allison. Yet this is the first time I have dated an alternative girl, and I wasn't expecting all the issues that dating someone different had brought me. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and as I said, I'm not new to the dating world. I met Allison at a house party. She was a friend of a friend, and even though she is not my usual type, there was something SI about her that grabbed my attention. I introduced myself, and we started regularly hanging out after the party. She was smoking hot, but like I said, she had an alternative style. She had a few tattoos and dyed her hair a bright color. Before Allison, I had only dated blonde blue-eyed girls, so dating her was a bit out of my comfort zone. Before all this, I thought Allison was a sweet, understanding girl, but I guess I had her all wrong. We got along great and she made me laugh all the time. I had been treating her like a queen, and I really don't think I deserve the bullshit she put me through. It all happened this week. She was telling me about how she had a tattoo pigmented and she was really excited about it. All her existing tattoos were on the smaller side, her largest being a piece that covered her entire thigh. Even though tattoos on women aren't my thing, Allison makes them look classy, and I didn't have a problem with them until now. Next time I saw her that week after her appointment, I was shocked and upset to see that Allison had gotten her entire chest covered in big flower piece. The actual tattoo looked well done, but it totally changed her entire look, and I was not into it at all. I couldn't believe she had made such a big change without even telling me first, and I just walked right out of her apartment without saying a word after she showed me the tattoo since I was so hurt. She tried calling me a few times afterward, but I just ignored her calls. I ended up ignoring her calls and texts for 3 days actually. At the end of it, she was texting me asking if we were even still together, but I just wanted to hurt her like she hurt me. Anyway, I decided to show up at her place after the 3 days. I didn't call her before since I didn't care if she felt blindsided, since she hadn't cared about making me feel that way. I was annoyed when she opened the door and I saw she had a group of friends over. She looked confused to see me and I told her I missed her and we needed to talk. She just kept staring at me looking confused, so I kindly asked her to ask her friends to leave so we could talk. That's when she literally closed the door in my face, so I started knocking hard on it and demanding her that we talk. When she opened the door again, she was holding a shoebox and I realized it was full of stuff of mine that I had left around her apartment. I was shocked. Was she really ending our entire relationship over something so stupid? I asked her if she was serious and she said yes. She didn't care what I was mad about, but she had no interest in a man with no communication skills. This comment set me off, and I refused to take the box and started raising my voice and calling her a selfish bitch. The commotion caught her friend's attention and they all got up from the couch to come over and curse me out. One of the girls threw the box at me and slammed the door in my face, but I was enraged at that point. I could help myself. She and her a-hole friends had pissed me off, so I stood there at the door cursing them at the top of my lungs for a couple of minutes. As if the stupid bitch couldn't be more immature, as I was finally turning to walk out I saw two police officers walk up to me. They said they had been called about a man yelling and harassing the building's residents, and they needed to escort me out or take me in. I was so effing angry and annoyed, so I finally left. Allison had a couple of things at my place and I took pleasure in dumping them in the trash. Whatever, at least I know now that I was right to date all American girls instead of trashy liberal chicks like Allison.
My disabled best friend asked to do something disturbing for her and I'm torn. I've never dealt with such a dark, heartbreaking situation before, and even though I have experienced a lot of pain in this life, this type of hurt is brand new to me. I feel I've been given an impossible choice, and I still have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm 23 years old. When I was 22 I was in an awful car accident that caused me to lose both of my legs at the knee. When I woke up in the hospital, I was in denial for months. It was like my brain just could not fathom what had happened to me. I would look down at my body, and it felt like someone else's. Denial in that type of situation feels insane. I would literally touch my stumps and wonder how long it would take until my legs grew back. After I left the hospital, I was sent to a physical rehab center, and I spent almost 6 months there. I was not ready to go back home, and I felt like my normal life was basically over at that point. At the center, I would watch TV all day and do schoolwork. The rest of the day I was receiving treatment. My life was depressing and monotonous until Christine arrived at the center one day. I remember giggling a little when I first saw her since she basically had opposite injuries to me. I introduced myself to her first day there, and we ended up becoming fast friends since we were the two youngest people at the center. Christine was 2 years younger than me and she had been electrocuted at her family's farm, and it caused her to lose both her arms at the elbow. It was hard to see such a young, innocent person with such a life-changing injury. When I looked at Christine, I wondered if that was how other people felt when they looked at me. Anyway, we spent every day together at the center. She was much more reserved and shy than me, and I tried my best to cheer her up however I could and bring her out of her shell. We ended up requesting a double room, and we had a lot of nights that felt like childhood sleepovers. There would be nights when one of us would wake up crying, relieving our accident, and we would comfort the other until we fell back asleep. Her friendship is so precious to me, and I think I would have been in the center for months longer if I hadn't been for Christine's support. We encouraged each other to heal our bodies the best we could, and leave the center together to try and regain some normalcy. We lived about an hour away from each other, but even after the center, we kept in touch, and I knew I had found a lifelong friend in Christine. My family is very patient and supportive. I also have a few siblings who have been really helpful and accommodating since I returned to him. I won't lie and say it's been an easy adjustment, and I have cried every week as I try to get used to living life in my wheelchair. But speaking to Christine gave me some perspective. The only other person she lived with on the farm was her 60-year-old mom. Christine had confided in me during our stay at the center that the older her mom got, the fewer chores she could complete on the farm. She said her dad had died a couple of years back, and since then, Christine started doing a lot of odd jobs on the farm to try and help her mom out the best she could. That's the circumstances that led to her accident. Christine was working on an electricity box that she had no experience with, and that's how she was shocked. Therefore, things had been extremely difficult when Christine returned home since she was still trying to be self-sufficient, but she needed her mom for so much now. Christine told me she was trying to teach herself to use her feet to do things like type and cook, but most days, she would just screw up and make a mess. After we had both been home for about 6 months, I was finally adjusting. Meanwhile, Christine was crying to me on the phone almost every night about how difficult she was finding her new life. My heart broke for my friend, and I felt powerless. I did the only thing I could think of, and I asked my parents to take me to visit Christine. They agreed, and we made the long drive over to Christine's family farm. As soon as we pulled in, I saw it was a beautiful and lush property, and my eyes welled up as I thought about all the work Christine must have been doing on it before her accident. My heart damn near exploded when I saw Christine run out of her house to greet me in the car. We shared a laugh when I hugged her, and she apologized for not being the best hugger. We all went inside, and I met Christine's mom, who turned out to be a lovely woman, but she moved slowly and had lots of wrinkles. My parents agreed to stay for dinner, and afterward, I slept over at Christine's house and my parents headed home. They were nervous about leaving me, but I promised I would be safe. Everything had been going great until that night. Christine and I stayed up late just talking about how we had been feeling since leaving the center. I had been talking about my struggles for a while. Christine had been quiet, and I finally asked her how she had been feeling lately. I could burst out in tears when I remember this conversation, and I'm still feeling torn and confused. Christine confessed to me that she was violently depressed. She said she wasn't adjusting to her new disability well at all, and that she felt like an awful burden on her mom. She cried as she explained that now that her mom was older, it was her job to take care of her, but now things were reversed, and she felt like a needy, helpless child. I tried to comfort her. I told her she was still so valuable and loved, and that her accident wasn't her fault. But my words were not able to reach her, and that's when Christine dropped the bomb on me that she didn't want her new life, and she confessed that she had been thinking about ending it herself. I cried as soon as the words left her mouth. I told her she was wrong, that she wasn't a burden and I needed her. She just said that no one needed her, not anymore, not like this, and that there was no changing her mind. She explained to me that she would be taking pills in a couple of days, but she wanted me to be there with her. She said she was ready but scared, and she didn't want to die alone. She asked me to stay a couple extra days at the farm, and stay with her as she passed. I had never heard something so painful and heartbreaking in my life. I spent the rest of the night begging her to change her mind, but it was no use. We just cried and held each other until we started to fall asleep to the sound of the birds chirping outside. Now, it's the next morning, and I know I have to make a decision. Christine made it clear that she would be doing this with or without me, and that there would be no time to involve any authorities and that she wouldn't let anyone stop her. I love her with all my heart, and I thought she loved me, too, so why would she want to leave me this way? How am I supposed to let her? My evil stepmother made my dad cut ties with me, so I used her life insurance to pay off my house. I was just 12 years old when my dad cheated on my mom and married the woman he cheated with. It was the hardest time of my life. My mom didn't have a job or a house, so she didn't qualify to have custody of me. I had to live with the woman who destroyed my parents' marriage. And on top of that, she absolutely hated me. She had no tact and told my dad literally in front of me that he needs to get rid of me. She wanted to live alone in a house with just him, and I was just a nuisance. My dad refused, but sometimes I wish that he had listened to her demands, because she made my life a living hell. As soon as my dad would leave for work, she would begin tormenting me. I was made to do all the chores in the house, which included cleaning the dirty dishes and scrubbing the floor of her bedroom. And this was when I was just a small kid. When my dad would return, he would praise her for keeping the house clean and she would shamelessly take all the credit. Whenever I had a school event like a baseball game, she would make sure my dad was busy on a date with her and couldn't attend. I remember crying while watching all the other girls celebrate with their dads. I tried to talk to him about this so many times, making sure that he knew that his new wife hated me, but he didn't listen. There were days when I would stay awake at night because I could hear them arguing in the next room. And of course, they were arguing about kicking me out and sending me to my mom's. All that made me develop a psychological urge to be independent and never rely on anyone. I worked really hard in school and impressed my dad. He said that he was going to buy me a car for my 18th birthday. But guess what? He never did. Because apparently, taking his new, young wife on a vacation to Hawaii was more important than me. After witnessing all that, I knew that it wouldn't be long before I was actually kicked out of the house because I was in their way. So I began applying for colleges that were so far away that I won't have to come back. Paying for my tuition was one of the only good things my dad did for me, and I am still grateful for it. But God knows that my stepmom threw the biggest tantrum over it and he had to spoil her for months before she was back to normal. But that also spoiled his mood over me going to college. As a result, he didn't call to check up on me a single time. Thankfully, while I was there I found my now husband and rekindled my relationship with my real mom. When I was about to graduate, I desperately tried to contact my dad to ask him to show up. But once again, my stepmom didn't let him get away. After that, I practically gave up. Although I still loved him and knew that he didn't have any bad intentions in his heart, I was fed up with his inability to say no to her. He never showed up to my wedding, or even when my kids were born. But that was okay because I was living happily with my husband and my kids, in the new house that we had bought together. However, this year, when I turned 45, something amazing happened. My stepmom passed away from heart failure, and my dad contacted me after years of silence. He confessed that he knew he had neglected me during my childhood, and he deeply regretted missing a huge part of my life. He said he wanted to be there for me, but he wasn't strong enough. I told him that he was just making excuses for his wrongdoings, and he surprisingly agreed with me. He said he wanted me to come to visit him so he could apologize properly. I honestly didn't want to go. But my husband said that I should and he would accompany me. In his opinion, the worst thing that could happen is that I would get closure. So yes, I went to visit him. And the way he apologized shocked me to my core. He wanted to redeem himself and leave his fortune to my kids, as well as pay off the house my family was living in. I was very grateful and thanked him, but also asked him how he had that much money left over. Turns out that it was the payout he got from my stepmom's life insurance policy. When I left, I couldn't stop laughing. That woman had spent her entire life trying to get my dad to abandon me. And she even passed away thinking she had succeeded. But actually, her Diat was actually going to help me way more than she had tormented me. So, in case you're reading this from the afterlife, you should know that you failed. My dad and I are going to fix our relationship, and I am going to be happier than you ever were.
My dad stole my scholarship money and had the audacity guilt trip when I was angry about it. He threatened to unalive himself as punishment, so I told him to go ahead. For context, I am currently a college freshman. I am on a full ride to my university. Every semester, I get a check sent to my house to pay off my housing costs, which is about $9,000. My unemployed father got evicted from my old address because he wasn't paying rent, so my family started living in a hotel. I was questioning how they were paying for the hotel, considering it was $150 a night. Turns out, my father used my college check to cash out and pay for the hotel for 2 months. I begged him to pay off my college housing costs for 2 months straight. He lied to me, telling me that it was attached to some funds, which were hard to get out. Very confusing, but keep in mind I have absolutely zero financial literacy and my father never went into depth. I brushed it off, hoping that everything would work for the best. My college housing gave my father a deadline to pay off housing costs, November 1st. I was stressed for 2 months, unable to eat well, sleep, socialize, etc. If my dad doesn't pay it off, I may or may not have to drop out. When the deadline hit, I called my dad and asked him why he hadn't paid off my housing costs. He finally revealed that he had a check on the hotel we were living in. I was furious and I started interrogating him like a prosecutor. He blamed the family for being responsible for using my college money, not himself, and also blamed me. He lent me allowance money for 2 months, telling me that it was from my relatives when it was actually from my $9,000 housing check. I asked him why he would do this and he said that he didn't want to stress me out. I cried telling him I worked way too hard in high school for me to drop out. I said that he owed me an apology 3 times over the phone, but he refused because he thought he had done nothing wrong since he was providing for the family. I asked him again and he said sorry in a mocking voice. I told him that he was full of crap and he started saying that he wants to put a weapon to his head and unalive himself and it will all be on me. This is not the first time he has done that. I told him to do it and I hung up. My mom called me and I informed her about the situation. She told me to apologize to my dad and I told her, as psychotic as I may sound, I have no remorse, especially after what he did. My mom threatened to disown me but I somehow mended things with them for 3 weeks. It is currently Thanksgiving break and my father still didn't pay off my check and he said that he would get money Saturday to pay it off. My mom told me again to apologize to him after he paid my housing costs, and I said I would avoid conflict. But I think I'm way too stubborn to apologize, especially because I genuinely think I have nothing to be sorry for. My dad never fully apologized and made a joke out of me to the family. My crush posted fake texts that made me look like a predator and it destroyed my life. I have become a depressed and mentally abused individual who was abandoned by all his friends and family, and it is all due to social media. In the summer of 2017, I was a normal 15-year-old kid who was tempted by the allure of Instagram. Everyone at my school was using it, including the girl that I had a crush on. My mom was old school however, and I wasn't allowed a phone before 2017. And even when I was, it was the lowest model of a smartphone that you had ever seen. My dad had passed away when I was just a baby, and she was raising me as a single mother who didn't have a lot of money. But I didn't care about that. All I saw was that I finally had a phone that could install Instagram. And so I did exactly that. I found a place in my house where my mom couldn't look over my shoulder, and made an Instagram account. I sent follow requests to all my friends and they followed me back. We used to hang out at school daily, so they were all really happy for me and congratulated me on finally getting established on social media. I made some posts, most of which were very cringe, but at the time it felt like I was the happiest kid on earth. A couple days in, I actually got a follow request from my crush. I had been desperately trying to search for her account, so this was truly a blessing. I immediately accepted it and followed back. But I was too scared to text her first because I didn't want to be labeled as a creep. Surprisingly, not only did she follow me, she also was the one who texted me first, asking how I was doing. I obviously replied in a very enthusiastic way, and we started talking. It turns out that we had a lot in common, especially our taste in music. So a few days go by and we are talking for around 2 hours daily. My mom sometimes yelled at me to get off my phone, but I wish I had listened. I hid from them the fact that I was on Instagram, and was talking to a girl. And then, a life-altering event happened that changed how I viewed the world as a whole. Summer break was getting closer and closer, and I wouldn't be able to see my crush at school anymore. So I was considering confessing to her via text and just shooting my shot. While I backed out from that decision, our conversation one day kept on going in that direction. We were talking about relationships and love when she asked me if I had a crush. Instead of answering, I asked her if she had one and she said yes. For some reason, I got really excited and just blurted out that yes, I have a crush, and that crush is you. It was all downhill from there. She didn't reply to a single text after that. I thought I had completely fumbled it, but it wasn't the end of the world, right? Well, apparently it was for her. The next day she posted some texts from my account to hers that I had never seen before. They were disgusting, vile messages that were threatening to do things to her that I had never even known existed. I knew that I had never sent those texts, and asked her why she posted a fake screenshot, but she didn't reply. Everyone who saw her story immediately believed that it was real and turned on me like I was a villain. I got texts from all my friends calling me a creep and a degenerate. I kept trying to deny the accusations, but it was of no use. There were still 2 more days left before summer break started, and they were going to be hell for me. I was avoided like a plague in my classroom, and no one wanted to even look at me, including my ex-crush. I shouted at everyone like a madman, saying it wasn't me. I never sent those texts. By that point, any feelings I had for her were long gone and I was just desperate to prove my innocence. Well, apparently, one of the girl's parents had seen what she posted and had contacted the school to report me for harassment. You would think that the school would conduct an investigation to find out the truth, but no. They immediately believed that what the girl was saying was true and she was the victim, while I was the culprit. My mom was called into the principal's office to inform them that I was being suspended, and would start class 1 week later than everyone after our summer break. To say that my mom was angry would be an understatement. As soon as we got home, she began yelling at me as if I had actually roped that girl. You are effing disappointment. I went through so much to raise you all on my own, and made sure to instill good values in you. But you proved that I am a bad mother. Now everyone will think that I am a weak woman who couldn't raise her son to be a proper gentleman. I never want to talk to you again. Once again, I screamed that it wasn't me who sent those texts, but my screams fell on deaf ears. True to her words, she didn't say a single word to me for the next month. A 15-year-old kid who had lost all his friends and was being ignored by his only family was bound to go into depression. At first, I was no different than a cringy teenager who faked depression for attention. I would avoid eating and stay in my room, refusing to come out. But instead of attention, my mother just kept on ignoring me. If I didn't come down to eat, then I could starve in my room for all she cared. Nevertheless, I would only come out for food and otherwise stay inside. The only TV in our house was in my mom's room, so I obviously couldn't watch that. Even though she never said a word, I could tell from her eyes when she was angry and when she wasn't. I would hear her getting berated and insulted by neighbors because they got wind of what I had allegedly done. Every single time that happened, she would come home and glare at me like I was the devil, but still never said anything. So I tried to find solace in social media, also known as Instagram. But that was the source of my pain in the first place. I would keep scrolling through memes until I fell asleep. I would also sometimes get messages from people who used to be my friends, saying that they forgive me. And then they would post my replies on their story with laughing emojis. I deleted that app but soon reinstalled it because I had nothing else to do. A lot of my school friends lived near me, so I couldn't go outside out of fear. That's how my summer break went. What happened when I went back to school? No one had forgotten my actions, and everyone was still treating me like crap. Even teachers would ignore me if I tried to ask a question. I tried to get my crush to retract her statement, but she was always surrounded by boys who would beat me up if I approached her. Eventually I just kept making excuses to not go to school. It wasn't hard at all, since my mom was still not talking to me. She would iron my clothes and prepare breakfast in case I wanted to go to school. But won't wake me up or tell me to go if I didn't go on my own. She didn't care one bit about me anymore. My grades inevitably dropped as a result of all this. The one teacher that still cared about me recommended that I go to the school counselor to sort my mental health. And what did that counselor do? Told me to sit on a chair in the corner and kept texting someone on her phone. My entire life was falling apart just because of a false intimate harassment claim. And the worst part was yet to come. Arrogant store lady thinks I am a homeless person and deeply regrets it. I am not a wealthy person by any means, but I have certainly made a decent fortune for myself. And while I tend to wear casual clothes, I do have to buy designer clothes for some occasions. That only happens once a while and I don't dress up formally when going to a clothing store. Recently, I needed to buy a new suit for my brother's wedding. So I put on a comfortable hoodie and some boxer shorts, and drove to a new store that I hadn't been to before. Now, while I don't dress up formally, that doesn't mean that I'm okay with people making fun of my appearance. As I walked into the store, I spotted a lady wearing the worker's uniform and went up to her. I asked her to show me some suits that were appropriate for a wedding. But her response shocked me to my core. She told me that they don't sell cheap clothes that homeless people can buy, and that I should probably go somewhere else. I thought it was a joke at first, and asked again. All I wanted was to buy some suits. But once again, her response was basically telling me to F off. Listen here, we store employees have to survive on commission from the sales that we help make. You clearly can't afford anything that I can sell you, so stop wasting my time. I have to spend my valuable time carefully and on people who make enough money to buy what they want. Not people like you who just go into store, look at expensive clothing, ruin them with your dirty hands and leave without buying anything. I stood there in absolute shock as she began attending to another guy who had just entered wearing a suit. She had just assumed who I was based on the nature of my clothing, which wasn't even in tatters by the way. I got the urge to take revenge on her by complaining to her manager and getting her fired. And I was about to do just that, but then I got a better idea. She had mentioned that the workers in this store got paid based on commission, so I decided to make her jealous. I found another worker, this time a young guy who looked like he had just started. He became really flustered when I said I wanted him to attend to me. He even asked if I was okay not going to some of the experienced workers. When I heard that, I knew that I had found the right person. I insisted that I didn't mind if he had experience or not, and just wanted to buy some suits. But this time, I also told him that I only wanted to look at fabrics, and wanted the suits to be tailored by the tailor that they employed. He began showing me around and I selected 7 different colors to be shortlisted. When he asked which one I wanted to buy, I proudly announced, "Oh, I actually want to buy all 7 of them." I said it loud enough that the lady from earlier heard it. I could see her going completely red and fuming with anger. The young man who treated me with respect took me to the checkout and began taking my measurements. I intended to just buy ready-made suits, but I knew that the tailored suits would be more expensive. The manager came out to do a round and saw me standing with 7 different fabrics. He greeted me and thanked me for buying a lot of items, and assured me that they would tailor my suits to perfection. He asked if I was satisfied, and I replied a big fat no. The color of his face paled as I began to explain what happened when I first entered the store. He quickly began apologizing, fearing that I would cancel my order. But I assured him that the young man had treated me with respect and changed my opinion about the store. The manager told me that he would make sure to fire that lady employee, and told me my total for the suits. It was more than $10,000 and definitely more than I had planned on spending, but I didn't care. I asked him how much commission the young male employee would be getting. And then, I looked back straight into the eyes of that arrogant lady and announced in my loudest voice, I'm matching that amount as a tip for him.
My perfect sister lied to my young daughter about how I got pregnant at 15. Then my daughter called me a dirty whore and made me cry for the first time in my life. When I was 15 I was roped by someone who I believed was my friend. I got pregnant and carried my baby full term because I didn't want to abort her. Raising a child was really difficult, but my entire family was able to help and support me during this traumatic event. They were honestly the best family I could ever ask for. My parents put me in therapy and I have pretty much learned to live with it. My daughter is now 13 and because she's so young, I decided not to tell her just yet. I don't want her to know she was a product of a rope as this could mess with her development. I have a sister and she's the most amazing person ever. I looked up to her growing up since she was 22 when I was 15 and I think we only got closer when I got pregnant because she was always there to help me. I seriously wouldn't be who I am without her and I love her. Well, the other day I was picking my daughter up from school and she seemed like she was in a bad mood, so I wanted to do something that would cheer her up. I asked her if she wanted to go to the mall or go out to the Chinese restaurant she loves. I saw her roll her eyes, but she got really sassy when she was in a bad mood, so I didn't question it. She told me she couldn't because my sister had promised to take her to the movies already. I loved that they were bonding, but I still didn't understand her foul mood. I told her I'd drive her to the movies, but she said no again and just asked me to drop her off at my sister's house, so I agreed. She came home 3 hours later and she was much happier. I asked if the movies were fun and I saw her whole mood shift in just seconds. She ignored me and went to her room instead. I thought this was weird because she normally always tells me how fun the movies are whenever she goes somewhere with my sister. I decided to call my sister to see if she knew what was going on, but she told me that she seemed perfectly happy and they didn't discuss anything. All they did was watch a movie and shop, so they didn't have any deep conversations like I thought. Then, I called my daughter down for dinner and she came downstairs, walked right past me, and grabbed her jacket and shoes. She was fully prepared to go somewhere, but she had not asked me for permission, nor did I know where she was going. So, I asked and she said she was going to get Mexican food with my sister. I told her I had already made dinner and I wanted to spend time with her. She got mad at me and told me to leave her alone because she didn't want to eat something a dirty SLT made. I was caught off guard and asked her what she meant by that. She said I was gross for losing my virginity at such a young age and that she was grossed out just looking at me. She called me a disgusting WHRE and slammed the door, then left. That honestly broke my heart and I started sobbing. I had gone to therapy for so long to try and cope with what happened, but as a result my own daughter basically SLT shamed me for having my innocence taken away. I have been crying ever since. My heart honestly just completely feels sad. I think my sister told her because she's the only person my daughter has been in contact with a lot that knows what happened. I'm devastated because she betrayed my trust and now my daughter hates me for it. My daughter came home late that night and I guess she heard me crying because she knocked on my door. I couldn't bring myself to open it because her words rang loud in my ears. How do I even approach this? Update: after a night of crying, I talked to my daughter the next day and I told her everything that happened. It felt horrible talking about it because I tried to put the past behind me, but there was no point in hiding it anymore. I said that I was hurt that she SLT shamed me and her calling me that was like putting salt in the wound because I didn't even want what happened to me to happen. She started to cry and asked me to forgive her because my sister had told her a whole different story. She said this all started when she was talking to her friends about their parents and she said something about me being 28, so her friends asked her how my mom let me have a kid at 15. She was confused as well, so instead of asking me, she called my sister. She was more than happy to explain the whole situation in a weird, twisted lie. She was told that I slept around during sophomore year, went to parties a lot, and that's how I got pregnant. She was shocked and grossed out with the fact that my mom even allowed that. I figured my sister had fabricated a story, but I couldn't believe that she made it out to seem like I wanted to get pregnant at 15. She, of all people, knows how hard I struggled during that time, yet it was so easy for her to make me out to be some sort of villain. It hurts most because I adored her. As for my daughter, she's grounded until her school year ends because she was incredibly disrespectful to me and she has to know she can't say things like that without consequence. I don't blame her at all for what my sister said, but she could have responded better to it. After our talk, I called my sister to tell her to stay out of my life and to never contact me again. I have officially cut contact with her. I told my family, and to say they were mad is an understatement. My dad called her immediately to yell at her. He cut her off financially and has basically disowned her. My mom felt bad for what happened and comforted me. She also told me that she called my sister to ask why she lied. Apparently, my sister never believed I was roped. Even after nights of crying in her arms about the horrible experience and all the nightmares I talked to her about, she was so sure I lied to get attention or because I was a dumb teen who had unprotected intimacy and got pregnant. Then, when I couldn't deal with the consequences, I lied about the rope and got sympathy from everybody instead of my parents being mad that I was pregnant at 15. She also said I ruined her friend's life, the one who roped me, so she can never forgive me for that. She said she hates how he's been suffering over the false allegations ever since. It hurts to know that she believed or pissed over her own sister. My mom defended me and said she had no idea what I really went through and she should be glad nothing like that ever happened to her. My sister called my mom stupid for still believing my lies after all these years. The truth came to a head when my sister blurted out that she hated me. She hated that I made her babysit and put her life on pause. She said she had big dreams that she couldn't achieve because of me. She resented me for getting pregnant and keeping the baby. She holds no ill will towards my daughter though and actually loves her like her own daughter because, in her words, I was the one who actually raised her, not my name. After learning all of this, She will never be able to see my daughter ever again, and I will never forget this.
My mom neglected me and ditched me for her new family, so I ditched her too. Plus update. My dad has been in prison the majority of my life for non-violent substance charges. My mom got married when I was 10 to my stepdad. Just to clarify, my mom and dad were never married. They dated each other and eventually hooked up and had me. My problems with my mom started when she got pregnant with my sister, and then after she had my sister she got pregnant again and had my brother, and I became like a ghost. She hardly paid attention to me. She neglected me emotionally, and I felt like I was unwanted in her life. It didn't matter anymore. As I grew up, I continued to try to get her to talk to me, but she was always busy. With my brother and sister, every family activity they did together, she always excluded me. It was always my stepdad and mom and my siblings except for me. Like I wasn't part of the family. This is how I came to my conclusion that my mom hates me or she dislikes me. As I mentioned before, I have 2 younger siblings aged 4 and 9. One day, my mom comes into my room, she's all dressed up and racing around, and I ask if she's going somewhere. She tells me no, and I go back to playing on my computer. No later than 15 minutes, I hear the garage door go up, so I race downstairs thinking, what the heck? Sure enough, my mom, stepdad, and my sister and brother are all dressed up and in the truck, and I'm standing outside, feeling really uncomfortable. The look she gave me as she jumped into the truck made me feel like I was interrupting her. There wasn't any "oh yeah, sorry," it was just a look of absolute disgust. I don't cry very easily, but something about the whole thing really got to me, and I went back inside and cried a bit but then got over it. Wasn't the first time. She texts me 10 minutes later telling me they're just going to the park. I don't respond because I would have just worked myself up again. Fast forward, they get home, I was eating dinner, and my 9-year-old sister rushes in after my mom and is super excited to tell me about everything they had done. They hadn't gone to the park. My mom had lied to me, saying they went to the park when they'd actually gone to Dave & Buster's. They also went to get milkshakes, and went shopping. I was visibly crushed by it, and my little sister noticed I had gotten upset. I could tell my mom was about to start making excuses and making the circumstances my fault, so to keep my little sister and brother from seeing that, I excused myself to my room quietly. It super sucks. I've been trying so hard to be a good son despite the selfishness my mother and her chaotically selfish ways have on me, but once I realized that poop isn't normal, so I started questioning our relationship. I didn't see any safe way out without ending up on the streets, so I joined the army. It was spur of the moment, and she still doesn't know. I can handle it, and it's the first decision I've actually made on my own. I cannot tell you how excited I am for BCT soon. Update: I haven't said anything to my mom about me leaving, but I find it really hard to do because my sister is outspoken. Everything she hears and sees she tells, so I decided to tell my sister I'll be leaving for a job that I was offered. I am going to tell my mom the same thing if she asks. My mom didn't see me moving my stuff out, but she did notice some of my things missing and asked about them. I told her I sold some of my things to make some quick cash. I just got a little bit left to move out and I'll be done moving my things. I actually asked a friend if I could leave my stuff at her house and she said yes. Some of you are probably wondering when I'm leaving for the army. It's on the 23rd this Friday. Some of you also ask why the army and not the Navy or Marines or Air Force. My friend who let me leave my things at her house has a grandpa who was in the army, and he convinced me to join the army. But if things don't work out for myself in the army, I'm going to join the Navy or Air Force or Marines. June 20th, 2023. Today my bio dad called me and said that he got out of prison 2 weeks ago. He's living in his parents' house. My grandparents, when they passed away, they left their house to my dad. So I went to see him. We had a good conversation. He apologized for not being there for me. I told him if he's truly sorry for not being there for me, he should make up for it by being there for me now. He told me he was going to try his best to be there for me and that he got a job in construction. I told him I was going to the army and he broke down in tears and told me he was proud of me. I couldn't help it and cried as well. It was a very emotional moment. I told him because he hasn't been there all my life, I'm not going to call him dad just because he's my bio dad. I'm going to call him by his name. If he wants me to call him dad, he has to earn it. He told me, that is fine. I plan on going back tomorrow and be there for a while with him. Of course it's going to be after he gets out of work. Edit: I am already ready to go. I am here in my biological father's house. My mom doesn't know I am leaving for the army. The only thing she knows is that I moved out of her house and am staying with my biological father. I left a note telling her everything about how she has treated me, except for the fact that I am going to the army. I am going to call an Uber to take me to the station where I'm going to get picked up by a bus and then take me to the army. I also forgave my bio dad for not being there for me, but I also told him that just because I forgave him doesn't mean I'm going to call him dad. He has to earn it. So I started calling him by his first name, Matthew. Yes, that's his real name. I could see it in his eyes when I called him by his first name that he was hurt by it, but he accepted the fact that he wasn't there for me growing up. And these are the consequences, but I also told him I'd give him an opportunity to redeem himself. Let's see if he really is sorry and regrets not being there for me. I don't know if my mom has read the letter because I'm not there to see her reaction. I did talk to my sister who's 10 years old about me moving out because I got a job. She was sad, but she said, "Are you going to come and visit us?" I told her yes when I had the time. She was 9 before, but she's now 10. This past weekend it was her birthday. My little brother is still too young to understand things, so I didn't tell him anything. He's only 4 after all. But this was the escape I needed from my terrible mom. I should call her by her name instead, since she was never a mother to me.